Alright guys, so here's the knife I'm currently working on. Sorry, I got a little bit of a cold, so hopefully you can hear me. At least half the knives I'm making, I can't for the life of me get the blade centered, and the other half of the knives, I don't have a problem with it. So I need to stop and figure out what the issue is before I continue on, because I can't keep throwing knives away. I mean, I can and don't mind this. This is the backup scale I put on it. I still haven't formed it yet. I can tighten this thing all the way down, and it barely moves it to center. I mean, I can get it to flip, but it's still wanting to press on the other side of the scale. I mean, if I really wrench on it, I can get it, slightly, I can just get it about that big of a gap, but it's so tight in there, it's not really useful. I tried different sized back spacers and standoffs, and I measured, I took measurements, and it's all good. I'm not sure if it's an issue with the pivot hole not being reamed exactly right, since this was the original one. I mean, and I didn't ream them together. I had to ream them separately when I replaced it with this one. The issue with this one, which sucks, it was perfect. But on the other knife I was making for Goosey on Instagram, I was making two knives at once. I was getting pretty close down to the wire, and I had the two knives sitting next to each other, and I had to shorten up this lock scale. I had to make a little bit of adjustment on the lock bar, and I grabbed the wrong one. I grabbed this one, and I took off material from this one, so I basically ruined this lock bar, this lock scale for this knife, and wasn't able to fix this one. So anyways, I had to make another one, and that's, like I said, it's oversized because I haven't profiled it perfectly. I just want to get it on there and make it functional. So I'll take it apart and I'll kind of compare it to this Blackstone Valley knife, which is my favorite knife. It's super fast, and this is where I need to be. I love this knife. There's a few differences when I take it apart that I can see. Mainly the bearing track on my knives. They really are formed in there. Like, maybe it's because I'm having to squeeze down on it really tight, but you can really see the track on there. Whereas this one, like I said, I'll open it up and give you a look. It barely leaves a little mark, and I don't really have to do any work on this thing to tighten it up. Just barely give it a little turn, and you can see it moves super easy. That's where I need to be. Some of my knives are turning out like that. I don't know how I'm doing the process exactly the same. I'll probably make another video showing exactly how basically showing all the processes I go through, and I also might make a shop video. But for now, I want to have some of you guys look at this and tell me if you see something that could be an issue. So I'll go ahead and take this apart now. I'm not used to working with a camera in front of me. So if you take a look at my counter bores, you can really see that bearing track in there. Again, I've seen a lot of knives like that, and I assumed that was correct. But when I compare it to Blackstone Valley Knife Works, it's just like a barely little mark. I mean, it looks like it shows up quite a bit on the camera, but it's not really indented in there. It's just a slight track, and it's super smooth. So I don't know if that's an issue with my knives. I mean, like I said, I'm making everything nice and flat and parallel. I'm doing them all the same way. Just some of them are not coming out straight. I've put this on the surface grinder, made it nice and flat more than once. When I did have the first scale on there, I was getting it centered. So I would have to assume that this is the issue, the new one that I made. But when I compared the two, the first one on the bearing track in there, it doesn't even look like it goes all the way around, like it might have been off somehow. If you can see it in there. But again, I was able to center the blade, and now for whatever reason on this one I can't. What have I tried? I mean, like I said, I've tried different size standoffs and even backspacer. I've made sure everything's perfectly flat. Before I even bent the lock bar cutout and I had a perfect, I still had it flat. I still wasn't able to get the blade perfectly centered in there. I tried that first because I thought maybe the tension from the lock bar was pushing off to the side, because this is the way that it's off this direction, so I figured maybe it was a lock bar. But even without that being on there, it still was over that direction, so there's no tension being pushed that way. Yeah, I can't figure out what it is. So if anyone has any ideas, feel free to let me know. I mean, my process is, like I said, it's always the same. I take my two scales. The first thing I do is I ream them with the 3/16 inch reamer. I ream the blade. Then I put the pivot in there, and then I start putting in the extra holes for the hardware, and I make sure everything's nice and flat, get everything aligned. The same thing with the blade. Start putting the hardware in, cut my lock bar cutout, put in the detent, and I do all that before I do anything to the blade, except for, the heat treat. I'll get that done. And I just can't figure out what is going on to not allow me to get these things straight. I was thinking maybe it could, maybe the counterbores aren't perfectly flat, but I trimmed my mill and it was perfect. I'm using a rotary table, so I assumed even if it was off a little bit, I'm not just plunging straight down. It's going around in a circle, so it's going to be pretty perfect, pretty flat in there. I'm making sure when I lock everything down on the rotary table, I make sure that all sides are nice and flush and flat. There's not like anything underneath, pushing it off to one direction. But every one, it always veers off away from the lock bar side, the ones that are off. I mean, in the next video that I take of the shop, I'll show you guys all the blades that I've gone through, which is going to be including this one. This knife, it's garbage now too, because I just can't figure out. I got to make sure that every single one of these is coming off the same, and I can start getting these out, because once I get to that point to where I figure out this blade centering issue, I can really bang these out. It's just that I'm tossing 2 or 3 of them before I get one out. So hopefully somebody can come up with some ideas. If there's any makers out there that have experienced blade centering issues like this, feel free to let me know. I'll definitely send a knife off, or a few knives off, and try to get it figured out. I have sent it off to a couple knives off to another maker before, and it looked like it might be my holes were a little bit bigger than my my pivots, so it looked like there's a little room there. But I think that was just a one-time thing, because since then, I mean, even on the Blackstone Valley knife, this pivot has a good amount of room inside when I put it in the hole. I mean, there's quite a bit of wiggle, and it's so that's not an issue. That little extra wiggle is not an issue, because that knife's perfect. So again, anybody's got any ideas, please comment, please DM me on Instagram, Hummer Blades. Share this with as many people as you like, because I want to get this figured out for my customers and start getting them their knives. Thanks, guys.